Chris Watts, I have been grabbed, like many of us have been grabbed by this case. And I believe it's because it's so mind-boggling. We all think that the usual, casual Joe that lives next door, your next door neighbor, the usual person, something like this doesn't seem to make sense. It doesn't seem to fit. And I like psychology. I like to understand psychology. So without further ado, I'm just going to lay out the kinds of things that I've been putting together to try to make sense and understand about this case. Chris Watts, I'll just like to put this out there. He had a tattoo of Metallica, the rock band, that covered most of his upper back. He was said to be a fan of this music. On the day of the supposed disappearing of his family, it was said that one of the searches that Chris Watts did online was for Metallica's song called Battery. Now, the oil tanks where Chris Watts disposed of his two daughters' bodies are commonly called a battery container because they look like batteries from above. The lyrics to this song, I'll just say a few things, and this video is not leading into any connection with Metallica. I'm looking at some mind-boggling things. The words to the song is lashing out the action, returning the reaction, weak and ripe and torn away, hypnotizing power, crushing all that cower. Battery is here to stay, smashing through the boundaries. Lunacy has found me, cannot stop the battery. Pounding out aggression turns into obsession, cannot kill the battery, cannot kill the family. Battery is found in me, battery. Then it repeats some of these things, but that's what that song is. And on the police body cam video, when they were searching through the house, they could hear a laughter that sounded like a young laughter, perhaps. And the police couldn't tell what the source was. Other things can be heard as well throughout the videos, but the most gobsmacking thing was the neighbor was playing his surveillance camera, the security camera, where Chris is going back and forth into backing his car into the garage a little bit and so forth. When he's playing these videos, playing it over, suddenly appears a commercial with a fetus, the outline of a uterus, and then down below there's a skull that's melting into some black, oily liquid. That was so gobsmacking that happened at that moment, because they didn't know yet. This was very symbolic and almost depicting of what actually happened. A skull is usually a symbol of death. Shanann was pregnant with the baby Nico, and the bodies of the girls were put in oil tanks. Going on to the things that I wanted to go over, and I'll try not to make this video too long. I'm trying to understand better the psychology, or better said, the psychopathy of everything that happened. I'm going to mention a few things because I don't know if there was anger that has to do with these things, but I will explain something of my understanding of a narcissist and psychopaths, how they relate to victims and how they relate to other people. Shannon is the victim. She was killed. She was murdered while pregnant with her baby, and her babies were also killed by her husband. So she is the victim. However, I just wanted to explain a little bit about my take on the family dynamics as it relates to this psychopathy of Chris Watts. When one observes these videos, she's very lively, she's smiley, full of life, very vibrant, and sometimes she might appear a little tired, but mostly seems to have a lot of plans and a lot of things to say about things she has conquered and so forth. In several of the videos, it appears from my perspective as Shannon tells Chris what things to do, and it looks like he does them at her behest. Often he rushes to do what she says, appears that way, and I'll mention the videos where I was observed these things, and doesn't seem to disagree with her, and he just seems to do anything at her bidding. He would not disagree with her. Even there is a video where it looks like he's dressed as Santa Claus. It does look a lot like it's more her idea than his. And he's at the door and she's asking him, "Where is your phone, Santa?" And he says it's in the garage. And she seems to be a little bit not happy that he doesn't have his phone with him. This is not very untypical of women with their husbands. Then the girls are terrified of this Santa, and Chris makes a remark after one of the girls get a picture taken with a lot of crying, and it looks like it's old Shannon's directing all of this. This is what she wants. He says, "Oh, we managed to get one kid petrified or terrified." So it looks like he's not on board with this, but he's going along with what his wife tells him. A lot of husbands do this. It happens. So some of the things observed on videos from Shannon in reference to Chris, she barely gives him some time on camera. At one point she says, "Chris, I am not making a video of you," when he gets in the video playing with Cici. It's supposed to be just a video of the girls. Again, like I said, when you just barely look at these things, they don't look that extraordinary. She makes statements like, "Oh, I wish that Chris was here to make the dishes." And then at another point, when she's talking about cooking these recipes that she talks about her product, she says, "If Chris can do it, anyone can do it." I know personally, as sensitive as I am, that would get under my skin. I would actually probably take offense of a remark like that. But the relationship, that might be okay between them for her to say things like that. There is a Facebook post where she's complaining about Chris doing a roast, not the way she directed him to do it. And you see comments from her father defending Chris, trying to make light of it, and she's like not very happy that he's not doing things the way she told him. Like I said again, I have seen this not be so uncommon for women to be this way towards their husbands. It happens. I've looked to see if that was just a video that was being done with family or just friends, but it's actually, the setting is set with a little globe, so it's public. It's for anyone and everyone to see. Perhaps she didn't think it was anything that shaming, but it is. She is actually very publicly complaining about him not following her directions with doing a roast. Like I said again, it might not be, maybe not too uncommon that women complain that men don't do what they say. she make a video making fun of Chris's choice for a toy. They went to Toys R Us and he wanted to buy a toy for himself. And it's a farting toy. And she's making a video making fun of his choice of toys. So we don't know if she's publicly humiliating him or publicly being demeaning. At times, to me, it feels a little heartless. It feels this is not the way you treat someone that you love. Don't know if it's founded. Maybe people start having hostility towards one another. We don't know if this is the family dynamic they had. When he forgot his phone or left it in the garage, she says, "My husband is a genius." In a slightly sarcastic tone, she's still smiling. She says he doesn't listen. Maybe she had these issues with him. Anyway, all of these things may seem normal things that happen between husband and wife. And it does seem, sometimes some wife will treat their husbands a little bit like their children, not as a partner, complaining that their husband is not doing what they say, or at the same time she actually doesn't appear, the tone doesn't seem that bad. She's not yelling or screaming. So it's almost like a little bit of contempt under her breath. But, however, and it doesn't even seem like he's paying attention to these things. By the way, one of the videos said that Chris wanted to be a mechanic. He was hoping to become a NASCAR race car mechanic. That was his dream. He wanted to be a mechanic. He met Shannon. They married and they decided to move to Colorado, and he got a job at an oil tank. It almost looks like she was in charge of the relationship of many of the decisions, and it's possible that he also had to give up in a way under this relationship. He had to give up one thing that he always wanted to do. We don't know if there's more things he had to give up. Obviously the Metallica, he could have that big tattoo. We don't know how long he's had it. Music is music. Their relationship seemed to work this way. And I personally, having been a people pleaser before, this struck a chord for me watching some of these things, like, for instance, when Shannon is playing and she's only being playful with a spray gun with Bella, and she's getting her wet, and Bella says, "Save me, Daddy, save me, Daddy," and he's like responding, trying to open the door to let Bella in the house, and then Shannon says, don't let her in. He closes the door immediately. So he doesn't disagree. He just does whatever his wife is telling him, and he seems to be very obedient in a way. There's another video where she asks him, she does say please, to bring her charger. He brings it, it looks like almost frantically, immediately, plugs it in immediately himself, and she doesn't say thank you. That happens too. Sometimes we forget to say thank you for things. And she says, I want a glass of wine, as if she's ordering him to pour her a glass of wine. We don't see the glass of wine come back. It doesn't look like he brings it to her unless it's later. But in that particular video, she tells the people, her viewers, that if they want to see her wash Chris's face, she'll do it if that's what they want to see, because her husband does whatever she tells him. And often she speaks in a way like, I'll put him to do this, or I'll have him do this, and I'll put him to do this. Again, it's a way of speech that maybe some people do. People do that with their kids. This is a husband. We don't know all the details. It might seem pretty normal, but it makes one wonder after a while if people sometimes get fed up. not a justification, because you don't kill because of that. And I don't think that's the reason when I get back to it. I had a friend of mine that I still remember. She was always bossing, ordering her husband around. If she sees this, I hope she takes it as a grain of salt. I remember her saying, honey, would you get my purse? And I remember him going like this, like cringing. And he went and got it. And years later, she told me that he wanted a separation. She convinced him to go to counseling, which is what Shanann wanted to do. And he decided to come back to the marriage, but he had his own terms. He put terms. He gave her conditions. These are my conditions. So things like this happen between in marriages. One person is a little bit more controlling, more OCD. Obviously, Shanann it's been said that she was very OCD. Usually people who are OCD are controlling people. They need control to compensate for certain things. She had disease. She was diagnosed with lupus. She was not having a very easy life in terms of her health. And all it takes is for the other person to say, well, I'm not really happy in a relationship when it's run this way, or fine-tuning. That's the way to go, not to annihilate your family, of course. Did Chris Watt have a relationship with his kids? Did he have a fatherly feelings for them? Did he love them? Everything in the videos look like a man who's playing with his kids, cleaning them, changing diapers, holding them. So it looks like a loving father. Is he doing these at Shanann's behest? Is she telling him to do these things? In the videos, they look like she's putting him up to that. It doesn't seem very volunteering on his own, pretty much, or maybe he is. It looks pretty much like she's putting him up to those tasks. He often seen in the video smiling. The smiling looks fake, and it looks like there's nothing in his eyes. I don't know if it's in back 2020 that I see that, but I don't see much in his eyes. Most people, when they smile, their eyes light up, and it's the eyes that can tell you that a person is smiling more so than anything else. You don't see that. It looks like an act, like he's pretending to smile. But a lot of people that are very much of a shell and they don't have very much inside, that's what they do. So that's why I think that there was something more than what we were seeing. So Chris' relationship with his kids, were they authentic? The kids obviously were authentic. The little girls did love their daddy. They would say, daddy, 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 a lot. And they would say, rescue me, daddy, or help me, daddy. So they looked like they were really depending on him. I don't know how much of an admiration type of culture was being fostered in terms of, but it looks like that. There was even a song that Bella was singing, saying, daddy is my hero because he helps me grow strong. The kids, kids are kids. They're innocent, they're loving, they give love back, and they don't see, they wouldn't see their daddy as bad. So Chris' relationship with his mother and father. The videos and the interviews and all the different things that we hear about Chris's mother are pretty bad. I'm sorry, not pretty bad. They're human. They're very human. They're the kinds of things that human beings get into. His mother didn't seem to like Shanann's domineering ways or controlling ways. There didn't seem to be a lot of understanding. she actually made it known that that's how she saw her daughter-in-law. In many of the videos, she appears cold. And there was a whole situation. I like to say that in the videos, and some of the videos I see Shanann making an effort to talk, to say hello, and to include Chris's mother. And it looks like to respect her as Chris's mother. And, this is my mother-in-law. That's what I see. One of the girls, I don't know if it was Cici, it may have been Cici because Cici had more health issues also. You have a child that had to have surgery to open up the esophagus, which is pretty harsh for little kids. You have a child that has allergies and has health issues, and here's this allergy to certain nuts that might be very specific. And you have to carry an EpiPen, and you tell all the family members to have no nuts or actually, for what I understand, she didn't say don't have nuts in the house. She said put them away, put them high on the shelf when the kids are here. Don't have them anywhere near. Boy, that's reasonable. It's understandable. You have to carry an EpiPen. It means that it could be life-threatening. An anaphylactic reaction can happen in seconds and minutes. A person could die. They can stop breathing. It's not a laughing matter. It's not a joking matter. It's not a light thing. If Shanann asked that of Chris's parents and she goes and there's peanuts, why argue that these are not tree nuts? You're not the expert of the child. The mother is. Why make an issue? Why antagonize? Normal people are agreeable on something that unimportant. For most people, whether you have nuts on the table or not is not that important, not that big a deal. Why not just put them away? Why make... Anyway, I get a little bit personal on this because it seems so unreasonable to make an issue when it could be so easy to just put the nuts away. Anyway, that was the issue that happened between Chris's mother and Shanann, and they had a fallout. So, Chris's relationship with his father, it looks like he appears closer to his father. When he confessed, it was when I saw in the video they said, I felt bad because I wonder if they brought the father in as a manipulation to get him to talk. I guess you do whatever is necessary. Did Chris know that they were being overheard? The clarification I got is that Chris himself asked to see his father. And his father came in and then he confessed. But anyway, there's got to be a relationship when Chris was willing to confess to his father in the presence of his father. Chris's parents' reaction to Chris's confession seemed really strange. His father at first seems to be more worried about Chris. That doesn't say, son, what in the world have you done? He starts looking in the phone to show something that Shanann had posted to try to probably shift blame. They don't seem to take responsibility for his son, and I apologize if this is a misconclusion. The mother is not agreeing with Chris taking a life sentence because that's the same as dying. Well, what kind of mother would say that? Any mother would be happier that at least he's alive. Of course, they're not going to be happy that they're in jail. They don't even seem to express any kind of real mourning or pain over the loss of their grandchildren, even their daughter-in-law, or to even express any sentiment to Shannon's family. That's the take that I get. So it makes one wonder what kind of an upbringing. I also heard that the way it's described, it sounds almost as if Chris was the gold child and his sister was the black sheep, because it seems like the sister, although she seems pretty accomplished and it doesn't seem to be that bad, I heard things like she would be more the one to stand up to her mother or the family. And Chris may have been the guy. If he's a gold child, the gold child usually tends to just go along with the parents. So that could be a way to become a person pleaser and go along with your wife as well. As a result of course, of all of this, their own son murder the family, it makes sense, of course, that it wouldn't be appropriate unless things were different, the circumstances were different, with all this bad blood, forgiven the pun, between them. It makes sense that they wouldn't attend the funeral of their own grandchildren, the little girls. I'm missing some points here, but I might go back. I want to say one more thing. When I went back to all these really interesting gobsmacking things that would happen, like you would see this fetus in a womb, unborn child is what I would like to say more, because it looks like a much more developed, bigger fetus in the skull, and the oil. It's almost as if something was saying, here's what's happening, he's lying, this is what happened. Christopher, the name Christopher has the word Christ in that name. And 33 years of age is the age of Christ. That's when he was crucified. We believe he was 33 years old. Christopher Watts was 33 when he did this. One would think that he would have chosen to make honor to his name, Christopher, when it has Christ in it, but he did the opposite. He did very, very evil things. With all this background, I got sucked in because we all get pulled in sometimes, and I was almost feeling sorry for this guy. I thought he might have had a lot of anger pent up. And then I realized that one should not feel sorry for evil. What was done was very evil. One can have compassion for that soul. So now getting to that part of wanting to talk about all this background, Chris's relationship with his wife, with his children, with his parents, I want to get a little bit into this psychology or psychopathy. He was described as a very nice guy. You see these videos, he seems like incredibly nice, very people-pleasing, doing whatever the wife asks. You almost feel like, wow, the poor guy. But one thing what he did, it would take to be a psychopath to have done that, to kill your pregnant wife, kill your 2 daughters, and then pretend that, totally lie the way he did, and not show an ounce of remorse, 1 ounce of desperation over his family. The only time that he shows incredible anxiety is when the camera was showing him by his truck, and obviously he's worrying about getting caught. He's worrying about himself. And the only other time that he showed emotion is when he's being convicted in trial. It has been said that there was a lot of screaming and crying when they were talking about taking a plea for guilt. And the neighbor said that there was a lot of screaming when Shannon and Chris had a fight. I just wondering if we see 2 sides of the same person. But about psychopaths, they hide that they're different. They try to hide it very well. and they fool everyone. And it would look like they're being controlled, but they're the ones that are in control of everything. So it is possible for a psychopath, for instance, who cares nothing about anyone, to pretend to care. One of the friends said that if he ever needed help, Chris would be right there and would help. He was always helpful. It almost seems contradictory, but it's possible that a psychopath would give an image almost completely opposite what they are, so to go undetected for who they are. Most psychopaths do have self-insight. They know that they are whatever it is they are. And it's possible that they would show they would put a different, opposite to fool everyone, so that nobody would be on their track to go undetected. So I'm wondering, now that I thought about this, he may have had everyone fooled. Lastly, I want to get into what I think happened, because at first it looked like, he just snapped. This was unplanned. It was not planned. It was planned. He planned this, and he planned it. He volunteered to go to this battery tank's place. He asked to go alone. He said that he would do it alone. He had been there once before. He was already planning on using that place for what he needed. Going back to the psychopaths, here's what happens with narcissistic and psychopaths. The reason they need to fool everyone and, give a certain impression and so forth is because people, to them, they don't have the same sense of a person that most people have, where you feel for that person, you feel what they feel, you feel sad for them, you feel concern, you feel care. They don't have those feelings. Apparently there's something in the brain that is different. Most of us, any of us can do harm. Any of us can harm anyone and anything. The virtue is we choose not to. And we choose not to because there's something in our composition that, call it scruples, call it conscious, call it something that sort of prevents us from committing certain acts. Psychopaths don't have those filters. People are to them like objects. They're not people, they're like things. And that might include, in the case of Chris Watts, his own kids. So he planned this, and this is my take on this. He ran out of time. And he ran out of time because of a very good friend of Shanann. Shanann is the one that has most friends. She had a very good friend in Nicole who had very good instincts, who knew something wrong, and she stuck to it. She acted on it. She followed her instincts. She called the police promptly. She acted so quickly very next day after that night that she dropped her off, that this guy had no time. His plans were thwarted. I believe he planned this, and he had a plan. He did say that he had to bury Shanann in a shallow grave because daylight was starting to have daylight and people were arriving. And I believe the co-workers, even though he said he wanted to do the job alone, the co-workers show up too. So two things thwarted him. One was at the site, and then Nicole showing up at his house. So my theory is that he was planning to work like a normal work day and then come back, finish cleaning up his thing. He probably had the cell phone, was going to make it go miles away. His GPS on his truck, it would show him just simply going to a day of work. Then he was probably going to drive wherever so that the GPS, throw the police off track on him, come back to the house, get rid of everything else. There would be sheets on the bed. They would, he would just take care of all those things. Shanann's purse, the baby's medicines, everything. He didn't have time to do all those things because of Nicole. And because of Nicole, he was able to be caught. One last thing, because we're at 35 minutes now. The affair with the Nicole woman, I don't know if we will ever know, but I find it very peculiar to several things. Nicole making sure to tell the police that she had been inside that house, and is she telling us everything about that? She made sure, imagine if her DNA is found on the house, she hasn't lied. She was in there. The circumstances might be different than what she is telling the police, or maybe she's telling the truth. I'm not one to say. Very difficult to believe that she would not have known two things. First, that Chris was married, not divorced, not separated, and that she wouldn't have known that Shanann was pregnant because Shanann was making it very public on her public things. And it showed that apparently Nicole did look up Shanann. She only looked her up. Very strange also for a person to go into a married man's house where his wife lives when his wife is not even there. So a lot of that about that is not adding up. It's also this woman, Nicole's reaction to the whole thing, saying, I'm ashamed of him, speaking about Chris. You're not ashamed of someone that commits a crime. You're appalled, horrified. You're ashamed of somebody who wet their pants or pooped on the floor, or ashamed of certain things, or somebody that got drunk and did things that you shouldn't do. But it was really bizarre that she was not more mortified than she showed, in that at first her first instinct was to lawyer up, lawyer up, anybody would do that, but I don't have it clear that she really was. I don't think she went to the police. I think it was found out that he had this affair. It was totally different than Amber Fry. Amber Fry was the one that contacted the police, cooperated fully, helped them solve, did everything that she could, because she truly didn't know that Peterson was married. She was truly lied to. This case, very strange. What I'll say is that I think the police know every trick that's out there, and either they don't pursue because they don't have evidence that to back them up. They're hounds, they get on these trails and they'll pursue things, but either they don't have anything to really back it up, evidence, or they give people enough slack to hang themselves. So it may not be over if there's more to it. I don't know, they close the case, there's no more investigation. Hopefully if there's more to it, we will know. If there isn't, maybe there isn't. I want to also apologize because maybe this person is completely innocent and is just acting and behaving in an unusual manner. That happens. Anyway, so these are the things that I had studied about this, the complexity. But what was good to think is realize that it takes a psychopath, a real heartless person with very little conscious regard of any kind to plan and carry out, and then not show any remorse or feelings afterwards of what Chris was. So therefore, the way to conciliate that image of the psychopath with the nice guy that we were seeing is that everything was played out as a nice guy, as a nice person. You know, psychopaths can be nice people too, but the pretending here was a person that all along did not have any of these regards. They don't see people that as people, and he was just throwing everybody off, you know, to kind of throwing everybody off all along. So his entire life might be a lie in some ways, and so it wasn't that hard to just be lying and lying and lying. All the lying was not working out this time, thanks to Nicole, because he ran out of time. Shanae's purse was still in the house. Her car keys were still in the house. The car was parked in the garage. All of her things were there. There were sheets in the trash. The sheets was over the bed. Everything that he didn't have time to take care of, all those details. Thanks to a woman with a good intuition, he didn't have time to throw off the police. He probably wouldn't have thrown off. Crime is always dumb and stupid, especially when it's this bad. But he could have made it a little harder for the police to investigate, as we've seen in other cases. That's it for me. Have a very nice day and sleep well, and know that you're a good person. Just take care that you don't get involved with the bad ones.